So if I were better at my job, I would have two clips ready to go. The first clip would be Will Palaszczuk, the voice of Charlotte FC, as well as Man About Town in the city of Charlotte, Hornets, Panthers, everything. When he said 4 weeks ago, that Colombia would win Copa America. I took his advice, by the way. I have a ticket on Colombia. And the other thing is that I would have yesterday's Place Your Bets, where I predicted Argentina 2-0 over Canada at plus 490. But I don't have any of that. But I do have Will Palaszczuk, the voice of Charlotte FC, at Willie P. Style on Twitter. You were on Colombia from the beginning, and it sucks that the U.S. men's national team didn't perform, because they would have been playing the only Copa America match in Charlotte tonight if they were lucky enough to get this far. How are you, man?
I'm good, Adam. It is unfortunate that we're not talking about a potential coronation for Greg Berhalter and a potential matchup against Lionel Messi in the final, but as things go, maybe it's a good thing in the long term for the United States, because maybe that's what we needed to have in order to try and realize that, hey, maybe he's not the right man for 2026, but that also is something that for a lot of people, an announcement that hasn't come yet as of this recording.
All right, I want to dig down on the Berhalter thing with you in a second, but give me an idea of what it's like in Charlotte right now. This is a big match. I mean, Uruguay and Colombia, which as a Liverpool fan, I'm looking at this as an inter-squad game between Darwin Nunez and Luis Diaz. Tell me what it's like in Charlotte in advance of this, because all of these games have been super well attended. I would imagine tonight's not going to be too different.
So I actually just came from Uptown earlier this morning and came back to my office to take care of some things here a little bit before I go back up there to do our broadcast from the WFNZ Doghouse. And it's already popping. There's a lot of yellow shirts already out there. I would say Colombia is probably going to be the more attended of the two fan bases, and I think you've kind of seen that over the course of this tournament. But this is the biggest soccer match in the history of the city of Charlotte, and I think even in the state of North Carolina, because it's a continental championship. It's basically on the stature of how big the Euros is in Europe. That's how big this particular tournament is, because of the great soccer history that exists in the continent of South America, and the fact that the United States is hosting this tournament for the second time and Charlotte has this semifinal. It's a very massive match. I even checked the ticket prices and the tickets availability right before you and I got on together, and there's not a lot available in terms of the tickets that come directly from the venue. All that's out there right now are resales, which tells you that it's going to be a full building. It's going to be a massive attended game, and I'm looking forward to how spirited it is between the two fan bases here tonight, and of course all the neutrals that end up finding themselves in to Bank of America Stadium at 8 o'clock this evening.
Right now we've got Colombia as, I think, a very, very slight favorite to I guess it just says to qualify on FanDuel, but really this really does feel like a toss-up match. Just real quick about how you've seen both of these sides. Like, I think Colombia plays a little bit more of the beautiful game. I think Uruguay is a little bit more, in the corners of a boxing match, trying to just rough you up. It is definitely, I think, a little bit of a different style. Is that how you've seen it so far? Who has an advantage in that?
It is a contrast in styles, and I think Uruguay is going to try to bait Colombia a lot early and often, and I think Colombia is going to have to try to make sure that they stay above the fray. I think they might try to possess the ball a little bit more, play a little keep away from Uruguay, because Uruguay is going to want to be daring and kind of take you off the counter, but I think you can't ignore the offensive quality in both sides. You mentioned Darwin Nunez and Luis Suarez, depending on who kind of gets the lion's share of the minutes late. We'll see what happens. But also, when you think about James Rodriguez in Colombia, they are a very strong side as well. So I think it's going to be very intriguing and enticing, particularly who scores first. That's, I think, the real one thing that you look at and say is the biggest thing from this perspective is who scores first, because that will at least cause whatever team is on the opposite side to try and figure out, okay, how do we tactically get ourselves back into this contest?
Will Palaszczuk, voice of Charlotte FC, is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. All right, to Greg Berhalter. We expect, really, that he will be replaced by USA Soccer. Going into this, I thought the conversation was pointless because I didn't think that they reappointed him, rehired him, so to speak, to get rid of him if this tournament didn't go well. But it didn't go well. And I think there is more of a groundswell than I anticipated, not just from fans and angry people in the media that didn't want him reappointed at all. But I think USA Soccer is kind of upset with what they didn't see, which was more of an attacking style. I think they felt like maybe this is a little bit too conservative a way they play. I don't know. I'm not sure we have enough good players. I think we have a lot of depth, but I don't think we have a lot of difference makers right now in the system, and I'm not sure what Greg was supposed to do with that. But if they don't, go, okay.
I think there's a lot that you can say that with this team, maybe with a more daring style, the players would show out a little bit more. I think that's the part of this that I feel like I come back to, and
but that's who Greg is. That's who Greg was at the World Cup. They played very conservatively. There wasn't a lot of risk taking. I've referred to Greg as he is too risk averse for me. I'm going to let you finish, but even the match where they were down to 10 men against Panama, I was upset that they just in the second half they just sat back and absorbed. They didn't really play. They didn't play. It's Panama, not Portugal. They could have still played closer to a normal game, confident that we had better quality than them, but that's not what they did. They sat back and basically dared Panama to score.
And I think that's the problem with keeping him. And I think that's the one thing you've looked at over the course of this cycle is that they probably do have more talent that can be unlocked by a different coach. And I don't know if this group of players has been put in a scenario to succeed. And I think about the MMA midfield of Musa and Adams and
McKinney. Really
the kind of trio that's helped there with McKinney as well. I mean, McKinney hasn't always been fit. So from that perspective, there's at least, I think, a lot of hope in what you can do, but I think those guys were, with the conservative style, kind of hung out to dry a little bit, and you weren't able to get the kind of quality from the front three. I think not having Weah for the Uruguay game also very much hurt because there wasn't a real like-for-like sub. I do feel like when it comes to their top 11, it's as good of a top 11 as they've had in any cycle in the United States international history. There really isn't the backup plan that you could go to beyond Flo Balogun up top, whether it's Haji Wright, whether it's Josh Sargent. I don't know if those guys are on the same level as Balogun is, and I don't know if there's another player with the kind of technical ability like Pulisic has and somebody who can be as daring a runner as Timmy Weah. That's where I feel like the real heartbreak is for this tournament, is that the Tim Weah red card changed so many things and enabled Greg Berhalter to play as conservatively as he did. And that's the problem that I feel like you are when you are this country, is that people aren't going to attach themselves to that kind of style. You need a more daring manager. And I know from the USSF, they're probably hoping that a lot of this talk dies down, but you said it, Adam, they've lost the American Outlaws, and it's not quite, if you lose the New York Times, you lose the presidency, but when you lose the Outlaws, you've lost a lot. And I think that, the side that basically supports almost everything that the U.S. men's national team and the USSF puts out there, when you've lost that entity and you've lost the majority of the entities of that ilk, you're looking at a scenario where it's impossible to win back public opinion, even with us hosting the World Cup. You are going to get a roadmap into the qualifying stage. You won't have a qualifying scenario that you'll have to get into for 2026, so that's at least an advantage. But that's also a bit of a curse because you don't have what you would consider to be the kind of competitive matchups. This was supposed to be your in lieu of a qualifying tournament, and you wasted that opportunity, and now you basically have to figure out and get your ducks in a row with a buyout for Berhalter, and also find a coach for an organization that, to their credit or discredit, is not exactly the most solvent organization financially.
No, they're not, and it's sort of an old boy network or everybody was complaining about Bronny James and nepotism. Hello, Greg Berhalter, right?
Well, that's the thing. I look at this too from and this is kind of a cross-sport comparison, but if you've seen the movie Miracle, you saw that Herb Brooks very much tried to upset the apple cart. I feel like that's Jesse Marsh's problem, and the hierarchy just won't have it. He doesn't want to kiss the ring. He wants to be revolutionary. He wants to be daring. You saw that with Canada throughout the tournament, and he just doesn't give a you-know-what. So from that perspective, I felt like that was never going to work. You need somebody who's going to kiss the ring, but also know that, hey, we need to play a lot more daring.
Can we move off from the fantasy that Jurgen Klopp is going to come out of retirement to coach the men's national team? I mean, not to mention it would take
not the money there.
$15 million to do it. But even so, even if they had the money, even if David Tepper would fund the men's national team coach, Jurgen Klopp's not coming out to do this. And again, you and I might differ in terms of overall quality. I think it was noticeable without Serginho Dest on the right. Joe Scally is nice, but he's not Dest. He doesn't have that dynamism. Yes, they missed
his loss was big, definitely.
Oh, I just think he adds so much. Like I mentioned before, I'm looking at tonight's match a little bit as a Liverpool inter-squad game with Luis Diaz for Colombia and Darwin Nunez for Uruguay. In some ways, Dest plays the position like Trent Alexander-Arnold does, where he is very much attack-minded on the right. He gets forward. He is great with the ball. He's not awesome defensively. But the defense necessarily hasn't been USA's problem. So they do need a different mindset at coach. Before I let you go, Will Palaszczuk, at Willie P. Style on Twitter, voice of Charlotte FC. You also do work with the Hornets. So what does it mean? Did they win a summer league title? What exactly happened that I missed while my kid is watching summer league highlights all day long and Cooper Flag highlights? Did the Hornets go 3-0?
They went 3-0 in the California Classic, which is the first stage of the summer league. The unfortunate part about this is that not a lot of the regulars were there, so it was, I think the most recognizable names were Nick Smith Jr., Bryce McGowens, and Leaky Black. The weird thing with McGowens is that he actually was waived once the tournament started, so he technically isn't even on the roster anymore. So the only two rostered players there were Nick Smith Jr. and Leaky Black, but it's at least a window into what Charles Lee looks like he's going to do. He wants to be defense first, and the fact that he got a group that was largely the same as last year's Summer League to play defense at a much higher level, I think, is an encouraging thing. We'll see whether or not it translates to the first team and whether it translates also to the Vegas portion of the Summer League, which may or may not include Brandon Miller on the floor. But it definitely is an encouraging sign going forward. Maybe a couple of those pieces latch on to either Greensboro or the back end of the Hornet bench, and hopefully that at least gives us some positive stuff and momentum going into training camp here for the big club.
I know because you picked Colombia to win. You've got Colombia over Uruguay tonight, correct?
Yes, I do.
All right, I am rooting for that, and I'm also rooting for Colombia to beat Argentina because it may or may not be worth plus 900 and plus 1,200 to somebody that might have a Colombia win over Argentina in the final, combined ticket. So I wish you well. Thank you very much. Have fun today, and try to stay out of the line of traffic down around Bank of America Stadium. It should be a madhouse down there.
Thankfully, I'll be there plenty of time in advance to where all I'll have to do is walk across the street from the doghouse to my commute will be very, very short, but getting out might be a bit of a challenge.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Adam. Always enjoy